Hello, this is Patty Younger with My Younger Life, and today I have a very dear friend of mine. I know I introduced everybody as a dear friend, but Erin truly is a dear friend of mine. This is Erin Simons.
Hello.
And Erin and I guess we met through educational system as art teachers and then later same church. And we've been friends ever since. How long's that been?
Um,
When you start, were you
I started
teaching or?
teaching in 2007.
So it'd
So,
be that long.
yeah,
Okay, do my math. 14 years?
yeah.
Cool. Anyway, Erin has something she's going to read, and we are going to talk about this. This is actually something that she wrote, something that's come deeply from her heart a few years ago, and it still has a lot of merit even today. So take off, Erin.
All right. Patty and I were just talking about, we don't even know what this is called. It's an anecdote, a prescription, a short story, what it is. Sometimes I tend to get on these little thought processes in my mind, and when I start typing, they just kind of come out. So, this is called Learning to Fly. Heavy breathing, sweating, white knuckles gripping the edge, panic and complete fear taking me to a place of anxiety that I felt powerless to overcome. My fear leading to insecurity and a lack of trust. How dare he push me from my safe place? Anger and bitterness sweeping over me. Love doesn't insist on its own way, I screamed. So, like any loving father would, he didn't leave me, but he gave me my space. So I crawled back into my corner of the nest, content to feed on the regurgitated excitement of others learning to fly, but never really feeling satisfied. Day after day, each invitation I received, I turned down or ignored, and the more lonely and empty I felt. One day, a storm came, and after it hit, I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the person looking back at me. What happened? Who had I become? When did I become so angry? When did I become the person who hides? I realized something needed to change, so I decided I wanted to learn. Not to actually fly, of course. That's way too hard. That's outside of my comfort zone. I might fail, and I've failed enough at things. So I read everything I could get my hands on. After all, I love to learn. I talked to people I saw as experts on flying. I even made a few models, but still I wasn't satisfied. After days, weeks, even months of frustration and loneliness, becoming more bitter and angry, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with my reading and talking to experts on the subject. Knowledge wasn't enough. These experts couldn't do the flying for me. It could get me to the edge, but it wasn't going to allow me to fly for myself. As if knowing I was ready, he placed his hand on my shoulder, and finally I accepted the invitation to learn to fly. As I looked at him, I was overcome with love, but also sadness. I realized I had wasted so much time trying to do things in my own way, by ignoring the invitations, by hiding. We took things slow at first. Each day, he held my hand. He was there to lift me up, dust me off, and tend to the wounds I received in jumping off the edge, falling flat on my face, and sometimes completely crashing and burning. Also, he was there to congratulate me each time I did a flappy, wonky glide with minimal damage. Sometimes another storm comes along. The weather, whether that be circumstances, religion, or emotion, tries to put me back in my place. That place of hiding in the nest. The place where things appear familiar and safe. The place where no risk is involved. But then I look up through the rain and clouds. I can faintly see those who have still chosen to fly despite the weather and have made it above the storm. They give me hope. I'm still learning to fly, but more importantly, I'm learning to trust again. Every day is a learning experience. Sometimes I have to learn the same thing over and over again. I'm not soaring yet, but every day I take another step off the edge, another step out of the pit of anger, bitterness, and loneliness, another step deeper into the ocean of His love, where I'm serenaded by the rhythms of grace. He is patiently teaching me, guiding me, loving me the whole time, giving me space when I need it, and always there when I'm ready to try again. It has been a long journey, but it has been worth every bump and bruise I have sustained. Lately, I'm experiencing less crashing and burning and more flappy, wonky glides with minimal damage. Before I know it, I am confident I will be soaring above the storm. Then one day, I can't wait to subdue it.
That's pretty cool. I read this when you posted it on Facebook just more recently, and I was like, man, she can write.
I've heard that a lot. But...
Erin is also an artist. She's an art teacher. Actually, you're like one of those rare birds that does a little bit of everything in the education world, right?
Yes. Art, music, and special education.
With the little ones, right?
Yes.
With the elementary kids. I had to stay with high school. I couldn't do the little ones. But so I think we find this especially with the creative, to be able to look at things and personify things in other directions. And there's such a uniqueness, I believe, about the way that we creatives see things. We have a different lens than everyone else. And that's why they refer to us as flaky or weird or whatever.
What is it? The fruits, the nuts,
the
and the
fruit-
flakes?
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Fruits, nuts, and flakes? The granola crowd?
Yeah, that's it. But so you told me before we started recording that you wrote this how long ago?
About 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So where are you at now in that flying?
In a different area. I think I mastered the flying in that specific time period, but now there's a different, the Lord kind of draws us deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these layers to things, and we get past one point, and then it's like He calls us out deeper.
Right.
And like when I wrote that, I was really challenged and scared to do certain things and think about certain areas of my life and heal in those areas. And I was mad that He wanted me to heal in those areas because I felt justified in my anger and my bitterness and all those things. And just like I said, how dare He? Love doesn't insist on its own way. Love doesn't force people to do these things. And He wasn't forcing me. I was just acting like a toddler having a tantrum. But so now, I thought that was hard. And right now, some of the stuff that is still relevant to me and resonates with me through that, I'm like, man, that's what I'm doing now is so much harder than
what was 4 years ago?
Yes.
What you're doing. I think that when you talk about soaring, I think you can soar in one area and still be hiding in a corner in another area.
Yeah.
So I think that you can always apply this to some part of your life. I can always improve. I'm struggling now with a relationship with a coworker I had at first, and I was like, wait, this is me. This person just got on my nerves. I don't know what it was, but it's me.
Right.
I'm choosing to allow this to happen. So instead of just sulking, being upset because this person was doing these things that shouldn't be done, like you said, you feel like you're justified in snapping at them because you're just like, stop that.
Yeah.
But you're really not. And I think we see a lot of this snapping at people right now with the whole pandemic, because so many people are taking out their frustrations on people who are just basically innocent bystanders in the whole thing.
Mhm.
I see it a lot working public service.
And this is something I had kind of written in our church homepage,
Mhm.
but about judgment.
Mhm.
You know, judgment, his judgment is love. And I don't know, that's really been on my heart a lot lately, just even for myself. His judgment for me is love. His judgment for you is love. His judgment for the person that I don't like, particularly at the moment, or who, you know, his judgment is always love towards them. It might look different to everybody, but
And you have to challenge yourself to get that. I think. I mean, because it's easy to look at judgment as punishment or pain or suffering or whatever, and not look at it as a guiding hand or, you know, a hug or a hold, you know, I don't know. It's easy just to look at the negative way of judgment and not the positive.
Yeah. I'm going to push you in the ditch to save you from the car.
Yeah, that's good. You're going to hit the ditch. And it's easy to hide in those corners of the nest. I know that there was a time where I went through this phase of, we did Experiencing God. Did y'all do that?
Yeah, Blackaby.
Yeah. Blackaby's Experiencing God. I recommend it. I really liked it. I grew a lot during that study. The God-sized task thing stuck out with me. And to do a God-sized task, there's always going to be something that stands in your way.
Right. Crisis of belief.
That's it. Yeah. I was trying to think of the name of that. Crisis of belief.
Yeah.
You know you're going the right direction when you hit that crisis of belief. And that's where you're going to question, or there's going to be obstacles. And you find those when you're trying to attempt God-sized tasks.
Jonathan David Helzer talks about how he knows that if he's feeling fear, like in the area of praise and worship, or just something they're trying to do in their 18-inch journey and things like that, that he knows he's on the right path.
Because fear is his indicator?
Yes. Fear is what lets him know, you know, there's something trying to come against this or trying to stop me, or this is an area I need to grow.
Right.
Because I'm meeting this fear. It's not just easy. It's not just comfortable. You know.
If you compare that to other things in life, it's the things that have to push against something that become strong. It's not the thing that just is there.
Yeah.
It's like the, you know, if something isn't challenged, then it won't grow up to be strong enough to handle the challenges, the big ones that come along. And it's really funny too, you mentioned that the challenges now, the challenge you had then you thought was big. I always think about, my mom hated those face symbols when you go to the emergency room, and it has a little face and it has like no pain and the pain scale with the different faces.
1 to 10, yeah.
She always hated that. I don't know why she hated those things. And they'd come in, they'd say, "Are you a 1 or up to a 10? Which one are you?" And she's just like, "I'm not a child. You know, I don't need the little faces." Comparing that, you don't know you have a 10 pain unless you've had a 10 pain.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think sometimes like things seem bigger than they are. And then when you finally take the step out of the nest, it's really not as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I wish I would have done that earlier or something, you know?
Yeah, it's like your fear and your doubt create this scenario that's not real.
The unknown is one of the greatest fears. What's the outcome going to be? Because we want to know before we step out here what it's going to look like before we get there.
Well, and I think like in this instance too, when you feel justified in your anger and your bitterness towards either a situation or a person or an injustice or whatever, some people like may find their identity in just wrapped up in whatever created that. But at the same time, some people, or even myself, well, what do I do if I don't have this anymore that I'm mad about? How do I treat this person if it's okay, if I'm not mad at them anymore?
Changes your comfort zone or your level that you're accustomed to.
Yeah.
Went through Sozo with some people.
Yeah.
And removed a really horrible thing from my past. I remember having a conversation the next day. Said, you know, I feel lonely. It's like there is a hole or a gap because that pain and that wall I had built around that isn't there anymore, and I don't know how to deal with it now because it's out there. it's loose
Yeah.
in me now. It's not walled up. It's not trapped. So the biggest thing that I got out of that was I've got to fill that hole with something good, so I don't build that wall back up.
Yeah.
And I know I spoke not long ago. I'd put a wall back up again, and that was a podcast Jen and I did.
Yeah.
The one, Beholding Love, we talked about the wall when we did the staring in each other's eyes things, and the wall that I had built was back. I was like, oh, I got to tear that thing down again. Because I like my walls. I like my hiding places. The comfort areas, because it's hard for people to get in and bother you.
Yeah.
But what life is, what does that do? It's not a good place to be.
Well, it's like I keep getting you were asking me before we started if I had thought of anything. And actually before I got here, which this might be a rabbit trail.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
I have on scissor earrings. Because, I am an art teacher, so I have
scissor earrings.
I have funny stuff like that. But my earrings are scissors. And I thought, I don't know, sometimes I do these crazy things where I'll have like mini conversations in my mind about, I'm like, what if Patty mentions my scissor earrings? And then...
I didn't mention them.
No, it was... I was thinking, scissors, they'll cut you. And I was like, well, that's kind of funny, but some people may not think it's funny to say I'll cut you. But, I was like, they're healing scissors.
Sometimes you have to cut things to put things together.
Yes, that. And you also have to cut away things to prune. And I was thinking of like a double-edged sword. One side of the sword cuts away and it damages, but the other side can be healing. You see like those movies where guys put their sword in the fire and then they like I don't know if they're sanitizing.
I wish people listening could watch the animations here going on.
Yeah, but just that cutting away, that is not just the pruning, but even like you think about pulling weeds, it really tears up the soil, but it leaves a space for something new to grow. So my scissor earrings.
I always like
I'm cutting you with a healing.
It's a healing cut.
It's a healing cut.
So when you say, I'm going to cut you, it's a good thing.
I'm going to cut you with truth. How about that? With truth.
Honesty. Judgment of love.
Yeah.
I know, like always, one of the things that Neil will put into some of his sermons are the ones where he talks about the metals when you heat it. And is it drought? Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
The stuff that comes to the top, the slag,
whatever.
Yeah. How you have to heat it and refine it, and the yucky stuff comes to the top for you to skim off. But you have to bring it to the surface first.
Yeah.
So you have to see it. And, I always like to try to keep time back to our original thing when you're talking about the piece that you read. I don't know.
Learning to fly.
Maybe somebody can comment and say, some of these English people out there can tell us, what is that called, a prose or a essay?
Yeah.
We can't come up with what it is exactly. If you're hiding in the corner of a nest, you're not going to bring forth what it is that needs to be proved.
Right.
Because you're cowering in dark or wherever. It's a comfort zone that's negative because you're not taking risk and you're not stepping out and you're not being who you're created to be. Because I don't think God's created any of us to be cowards.
No.
Or to be afraid or ashamed or, not being who he created us to be. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to do that.
And I think the size of those things is different for different people. Like
right.
The stay-at-home mom, your courage might just be getting up, getting your shower, making a routine, and then getting out and being with adults.
And you have experience with that, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, that can be scary because you kind of lose yourself in that.
See, that would terrify me. To stay home and having people to rely on me to set the schedules for the day and to focus on. I could never homeschool my kids or anything.
So see, to you, that's a fear, and it would take a lot of courage to do that. But somebody else, they're just like,
right,
oh,
it's just
another day, another minute.
No, I got this.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. So I think it doesn't have to be, I quit my job and I moved cross country. And One thing I had mentioned in the learning to fly was the regurgitated.
I love that line
You know,
because it's gross.
it is, but that's what birds do. They
Yeah.
like mama
Mhm.
birds regurgitate to the baby birds, and so if you have that imagery along with what's being said there, are you staying in the nest, living off of everybody else's
Yeah.
their highs,
What they're
and their
actually getting
lows,
the
and what
first feed of, and then
Mhm.
you're being satisfied with just the leftover second regurgitated food.
Yeah. But eventually, doesn't
Yeah.
that like lead to death? You know, the
Yeah.
bird has
Yeah.
to leave the nest, or
And I know leaving the nest has risk, and not to go too far down this analogy, because we're not taking the risk of flying and getting eaten by an animal or something.
yeah.
But there is risk of being hurt.
Mhm.
There's risk of being, smacked around, pushed back, feelings hurt, physical hurt, all those things, suffering. Those risks are there. But if you don't have those risks, or you just know, if you don't have lows, how do you know where the highs are?
Mhm.
So if you don't take those risks, how do you know what life is? What's so out there? It's like someone who has this pain. I'm trying to remember the conversation I had the other day. And somebody, it was you.
Was it me?
It was you. You're talking about the allergies,
Yeah.
and you didn't realize how bad you felt. It's hard to tell how good you probably will feel because you don't know how bad you felt all this time.
Yes.
Having undiagnosed allergies.
Yes.
That was it. I remember the conversation now. But you don't know that you're suffering until you're not suffering anymore.
Right.
Because it just becomes so much a part of you. So if you don't step out of the nest and take a risk, you don't know.
Right. And that's where I was saying that I think some people tie some of those things to their identity. Like, this is who I am, or this has caused me to be who I am, or this, which may be true in some sense of the word. Sure, everything shapes us into certain things, but down to the nitty gritty, it doesn't change who we are at our core.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the very first podcasts I did was on the onion that we talked about at women's retreat that time. I always loved that Diane Hillman, who has been on my podcast, talked about that onion and how that center of that onion is what we're our original man, and you get all those layers built up on you. And I always come back to that because I think it's just so cool to think of that original person you're created is so pure. And meant for so many things. And then we put a layer on and think, well, what if I fail? We put a layer on. What if I get hurt? Those layers really hold us back.
Yeah.
And weigh us down, and they really hurt us.
Well, it's kind of like those walls you were talking about. Like, I just imagine putting on a coat. Like, it's cold outside, and so you're trying to protect yourself from these elements or these, like, external things. So you put on this coat. Or maybe you start with, like, a sweatshirt. And then you realize, oh, I can still feel this cold that is not comfortable to me. And so I'm going to put on another layer. So I'm going to put on my coat. And then, I got to put on some gloves and hat. And, you keep putting on all these things. I don't know, you got to peel all that stuff off
Eventually you're like the toddler in the snowsuit. They can't walk.
They can't do anything. And then I just imagine, I could see my kids putting on all this stuff and then imagine the massive pile of stuff in front of my door after they come inside and take everything back on.
I can see that. So that's good stuff. I'm glad we had this today. And we'll do some more if you want.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep. So until next time, you guys, challenge yourself, pick a God-sized task, pray about it, step out.